What's up everybody, it's me Eman from Eman's Movie Reviews, and today we're going to review King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Alright, let's get into a quick intro. Arthur grew up in the back alleys of the city while being robbed of his birthright. After pulling out a magical sword from a stone, his legend now begins. Alright, let's get straight into the good. The one thing I really liked about this film was the fact that it really wasn't about King Arthur himself. As a matter of fact, Arthur was kind of like a co-star to the actual sword. We get a lot more mythology about the sword, its origin, and the power that it grants its wielder. Now, if you're a fan of Japan animation, then you're probably going to notice a lot of the similarities that this film adapts when you see the power that is erupted when someone holds on to the sword. Charlie Hunnam was clearly in a role that catered to all of his strengths. He could be witty, charming, inspirational, and very physical in a lot of these action scenes. Eric Bana was actually one of my personal favorites, and even though I really can't put my finger on it, he was one of the few characters that you can actually relate to, even though his role was minor. Another aspect of the film that I did like was the theme of sacrifice. It was a theme that was played out in a number of different ways with a number of different characters, but more specifically it was with Jude Law's character. I loved how it added a certain level of depth to his character, which made him a much more complex villain in the movie. Well, that's all I got. Let's go on to the bad. The film has a lot of long and slow moving parts. The film is only about 2 hours and 6 minutes long, but it really felt like 2.5 hours. The dialogue and all the back and forth banter probably contribute to this a lot. Furthermore, the story itself is really predictable. While it is probably a more fresh and original take on the King Arthur story, you can see the intentional twists and turns coming from a mile away. You know, it's funny, I can't help but to think that maybe a combination between the thicker English accents and the dialogue combined were a bit of an issue. Like I said, there's a lot of dialogue in this, and it's used to help tell the story or hypothetical situations. And it can get a little confusing when you're mixing all of that dialogue and banter along with a lot of the camera visuals switching back and forth really quickly. Now, another thing is when you think of King Arthur and you think of the sword, the one other character that typically is also associated is the wizard Merlin. I was really disappointed in the fact that they only kind of talked about Merlin and they only briefly showed him kind of sorta on screen. I mean, imagine watching Lord of the Rings and only hearing mentions of some wizard named Gandalf. I just think it was a real missed opportunity to highlight one of the central figures in this legend. When it came to Jude Law's character, this was a bit of a disappointment. I thought that his character was a little bit rushed and his motivations were really poorly developed. His character did have a lot of potential to be deeper than he was. We never really get a solid explanation as to why he does the things that he does outside of just, generic explanations like he's jealous or he just wants more power. Lastly, my most notable issue is the blurry CGI action scenes. Now, I have made similar criticisms with Man of Steel. When you have all these action scenes that are just so fast paced, it's just really hard for the audience to keep up with it. Now, to the film's credit, they did add a couple scenes where it was in slow motion so that you can kind of sort of make out what was going on. But for whatever reason, the computer special effects that were used in this movie makes you feel as though you're watching a movie and then all of a sudden you're watching a video game. Towards the end of the movie, I couldn't help but think that I was watching Mortal Kombat or something. Okay, enough of that, let's get to the reason. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword had so much potential to be better than it actually was. Now, as an admirer of the King Arthur tale, I really wanted to like this movie. Granted, I don't necessarily dislike it either. It just feels like it's going to be forgettable in about a week or so. Now, I think what we have to realize here is that this is a Guy Ritchie film. This is the same guy that brought you the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. and Man from U.N.C.L.E. He's got a very distinct style with his movies, and kind of like with any type of art form, you're either going to gravitate to it or you probably won't. For me, this probably wasn't one of his strongest films. If you're a Charlie Hunnam fan, then this movie is going to be very watchable for you. Given the number of Game of Thrones actors that are in this movie, it almost felt like watching Game of Thrones plus Assassin's Creed. So when it comes to the rating for King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, I've got to give it a 6 out of 10. While this movie isn't necessarily something that you have to rush to the theaters to go and see, I can still see the appeal for some people to go see it. All in all, you can wait on seeing this. Well, that's all I've got. Thank you for joining me. Are you planning on going to see King Arthur, Legend of the Sword? If you have seen it, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to stay connected with me, you can always follow me on any one of my social media platforms. I got more reviews and videos coming up for you guys. And until then, I'll see you later.